The next trend up you are going to love. It's one of my favorites of all time, and in true 70s trend jargon, I have decided to call it Hooray for Hollywood. This was a pure nostalgic trend, an escape into past glamour. It was all part of the Deco revival of the early 1970s. This is going to be very easy for me to explain to you because we've already done Art Deco. We did the 20s, we did the 30s. Here is Twiggy again. She doesn't look like that little mod kid on Carnaby Street anymore, does she? In her little Mary Quant A-line mini dress. The Deco revival again, an escape into the past, this time into the glamour of old Hollywood. So the interest in Victorian and Edwardian nostalgia we saw in the late 60s would explode in the 70s. We saw it with the Victorian Edwardian storybook trend, but this time the focus was on the late 20s, the 30s, and then, as you'll see, by mid-decade, the 1940s too. And there she is, looking very intentionally like who? Marlene Dietrich, I'd say. Her name was Barbara Hulanicki. She was of Polish descent, but completely British, terribly posh. And she was an incredibly gifted and visionary woman. Her label was not called Barbara Hulanicki. Her label was called Biba. And this is so legendary, the Biba name, know it. This is the quintessential Biba look. It's so 30s, isn't it? Look at those Jean Harlow curls. Look at that big 1930s Riviera hat. This is one of the iconic Biba t-shirts. Note the Deco font, the Deco graphic. Think black and gold when you think Biba. Look at this Biba evening dress. Incredible. If I put this on an exam and said, okay, date it, and you wrote 1930s, you know what? I couldn't blame you. Look at that Art Deco Biba platform heel. This jacket is so 30s, I can look at it and I know it's 70s because I have a trained eye and I'm Prof H. But I wouldn't blame you if you thought it was 30s. Isn't it wonderful? And take a look at this suit. We're even getting into the 40s here, aren't we, with the peplum, the shoulder pads, and the A-line skirt. That's a little bit later in the Biba story. But here is where the story really gets good, and it's sort of a cautionary tale for anyone working in fashion retail. Okay, Barbara had her little boutique in the 60s called Biba, a little boutique. Everybody had their little shop. Mary Quant had her boutique. There was Granny Takes a Trip. There was I Was Lord Kitchener's Valet. There was Mr. Fish, and there was Biba. But then, because she really saw this whole Deco revival happening, she and her husband, who was her business partner, somehow, I have no idea how, because they were both just very young, they got the funding to rent an entire Deco department store on Kensington High Street, which is in the centre of London, a very trendy shopping street at the time. Here it is, formerly Barker's, just an old lady department store. They took it over, and this was one of the biggest stories of fashion retail, I think. She launched Biba, the department store. Here is a little promotional newspaper that was given out to announce the launch. Welcome to the new Biba. Take a look at the typography. Take a look at the graphics. It is completely a playful nod, isn't it, to the 20s and 30s. Barbara offered complete escapism out of this horrible world of Biba and terrorism and all of this crap into the glamour of the 1930s. Look at this display. This is just one of the many counters on the 6 or 7 floors of Biba. I have been to Biba many times. I went to Biba often as a little girl because my sisters were Biba girls. They both worked at Biba. They are older than I am by about 10 years or so. And so when I was a very little girl, they were teenagers and they had the coveted job of being Biba shop girls. But look at this display. See the carpet? Barbara Hulanicki had all of the carpets specifically and specially made to deck out this entire massive department store in this Deco design. The ostrich feathers, I remember there was always this incredibly kind of heady, exotic smell in Biba. Take a look here. You can see this is a photograph, a fashion photograph of somebody wearing a very 1930s looking Biba outfit, sort of 30s resort, but check out the doorway behind her. This is the Egyptian 20s revival, revived again, for the Deco revival of the early 70s. This is the cosmetics counter. Everything in Biba was the Biba label. Everything was Biba. Cosmetics, homeware, everything. Biba had its own nightclub. Imagine a department store with a nightclub. A 1930s style glamorous nightclub called the Rainbow Room, where they would have a big band orchestra playing or a pianist playing. This is where the in crowd went in the early 70s. This is where you'd find your Bianca Jagger. It's where you'd find your David Bowie. It's where you'd find your whole glam rock crowd. The Rainbow Room at Biba. Oh my God, the glamour and the escapism of it all. And one can only assume that people in the Rainbow Room dressed like this. I was too little to ever go to the Rainbow Room. This is Twiggy again, wearing Biba. And I'm showing you this picture just to alert you to the high glamour, but also the return of animal print, of cheetah, of leopard. Where did we see that? We saw that in the 30s. Remember the African craze? Biba revived this, and so cheetah and leopard are one of the key motifs of the Deco revival. Look at this. It looks like a record player, doesn't it? Well, it is, sort of. But look at the shells. They are actual albums, LPs. So then you start to make sense. This was an enormous, oversized, old-fashioned record player. The records actually spun around and children could walk up those steps and sit on them. I remember doing that, and then you could sort of spin around on it. This is the food department. Can you see what's happening here? Giant tins of sardines rolled back to display the goods. Those of you interested in visual merchandising should really study Biba. It's so incredible. This is the shoe department. You can imagine Marlene Dietrich swanning through here and buying some shoes. Everything was beautifully and ambiently lit so that you really felt you were in a 1930s movie. This is Barbara Hulanicki herself. She is not in a park or a garden. She is on the roof of Biba. They actually had a roof garden with a tea room and real pink flamingos. This is London. We don't have flamingos in London. But the roof garden of Biba had real pink flamingos. It was that glamorous. Everything in Biba was Biba, down to their baked beans. When people talk about Ralph Lauren being the first lifestyle brand, they're wrong. Biba was the first lifestyle brand, and the lifestyle they were selling was one of old Hollywood glamour. Did you enjoy that? I hope you did. I love seeing creative fashion people at work, don't you? I find it so inspiring. And wasn't Biba incredible? But you know what? Biba was just the pinnacle of an enormous international fashion and cultural trend. Take a look at this layout. This features Faye Dunaway. You might recognize her, who played Bonnie in Bonnie and Clyde. Everything she's wearing, of course, is part of the 1930s revival. Take a look at the polka dots on the left there. But also check out the typography and the graphics. Completely 30s. This is Biba again. Utterly in keeping with the whole revival. How glamorous. And please look at those metallic platform heels. Look at this on the right. It's Pat Cleveland, who of course was one of the first African-American supermodels, a wonderful lady, a friend, I believe, of Professor Cockle's. But look at what she's wearing. It's totally 1930s resort, isn't it? Look at her big palazzo pants and that enormous hat. We saw that when we did 30s resort, didn't we? But look at her companion. He's like Edward VIII. He's got his polka dot cravat. He's got his big pants. So glamorous, such an escape. I love this layout. It's from the mid-70s. Look at the copy, Bright Lips of Yesteryear. The hat swoops like a piece of jet-age architecture, cartwheeling past the glossiest of red lips. The sleek fashion look of the 30s and 40s has resurfaced. Women with plucked brows are slipping into slinky halter-neck dresses, wedgies and chubby jackets, while men are stepping out in two-tone shoes and bow ties. Believe me, this was a deliberate revival. This is Twiggy in the 60s, how we think of Twiggy, right, with those big childlike eyes. This is Twiggy in the Biba era. Look at those plucked brows, that curly kind of Jean Harlow soft 1930s hair, and that kind of very metallic sheen to her makeup. Everybody did this revival look. This is Diana Ross doing the 30s revival. It parlayed into movies as well. Here we have Jodie Foster in a very famous movie called Taxi Driver by Martin Scorsese. Guess what? She plays a child prostitute. We keep running into this in the 70s, don't we? Brooke Shields in Pretty Baby. Jodie Foster in Taxi Driver. That's not important. What's important is that she is wearing an adaptation of the Biba look, with that curly hair and the big hat, and her outfit in general. But take a look at those huge wedged shoes. There were many movies. Some of the biggest movies of this era, the early 70s, were set in the 20s or 30s. Paper Moon. This is a delightful movie set on the Dust Bowl during the Great Depression of the 30s, starring Ryan O'Neal and his own daughter, Tatum O'Neal. The Sting. This is a wonderful movie with Paul Newman and Robert Redford, a huge hit set in the 20s. Cabaret with Liza Minnelli, set in Weimar, Berlin in the 1930s. And of course, Gatsby. The original version of Gatsby, although I believe there was actually a version before this one. But this was the most famous version of The Great Gatsby, starring Robert Redford and Mia Farrow, set in the 20s. So you see, this was huge. Here are the Pointer Sisters. They were a disco group. Look at this photograph. They are completely 1930s/40s nostalgia for this era. And look at this image of the actress Angelica Houston. Could you get more 20s than this? Now you can look at this and you will know that this is 70s revival. First of all, you know it because it's in color, but I think you could probably just tell. Basically, an easy way to tell the real 20s and 30s from the 70s revival is that the 70s revival had more color in it, and it had a slightly more playful approach. Well, after seeing all of that, would you like to be a Biba girl? Take a look at this. Biba is looking for intelligent, attractive, hard-working girls who want to make a career for themselves. Oh my god, this is so 70s. We offer excellent and rapid promotional prospects, good starting salaries, 1 free meal per day in our staff restaurant, staff sauna bath. Yes, there was a sauna at Biba as well, and a massive discount. Well, my sisters, as I just mentioned, did work at Biba, and they had the time of their lives. But to work there, you had to have a certain look. The Biba look became kind of a universal look for young, trendy girls in the early 70s. Let's find out how to get it. The Biba look. Let's start with our girl. The in-class section of Fashion History and Global Attire have decided to call her Sarah. So let's call her Sarah. Let's turn Sarah into a beautiful Biba girl. First thing, those very skinny arched brows that we last saw in the 1930s. Then, a very dark and smudgy eye with a lot of purples, a lot of russets, and a slight metallic sheen. Then glitter. Put it on the cheekbones as well. And then a very dark, very retro, glamorous lip. And then a red kind of henna color was preferable, and a huge head of curls, of hennaed 30s glamour curls, and this was the Biba look. See what I mean? It really became a standard for beauty. Look at her eyebrows. And look at her, even though the picture is in black and white, you can see she has the skinny brows, she has that kind of a glittery sheen on her eyelids.